If you already know how to play Catan and you're ready to improve, refine, and level up your gameplay, this strategy guide will give you the next steps to start dominating. This is Flash and Cax with Legendary Tactics. Catan is arguably the cardinal board game responsible for the reinvigoration and rebirth of tabletop gaming. More than any other game, this is the one that people will cite as the gateway game that got them into the hobby. So today I'm here with Cax, who's going to teach me and you how to take your gameplay up a notch.
Hey, thanks, Flash. So I think it's really important to start with the initial setup. It is critical that you get this right.
Perfect. Okay, so what do you suggest for resources right off the hop?
Okay, you really want to go for one of everything. Wood, brick, wheat, sheep, and ore. You want to place your first settlement to get 3 resources. Then your last placement will let you score the last 2. You want to place your settlements to maximize the chances of getting resource cards. 13 pips is the best you can do, so avoid the desert and the coast.
Okay, now, do you personally think it's better to go first, or do you prefer going last or somewhere in the middle?
This is a tough one. If you get first pick, you're going to end up picking the last overall placement, so you won't have many great choices there. That's when coastal options may be more appealing, if they come with a port. Pick one with 2 hexes. Yeah, you'd make sure. So pick one with 2 hexes adjacent rather than 1. Overall, going first isn't my preference. I'd like second or third placement because there are usually 3 strong choices always on the board to start. Choosing late in the game can sometimes hamstring you.
Right, okay, so it's like when you do the NHL and you get Sidney Crosby up front and then you end up with the schlep at the end of the game.
The big old schlep.
Yep. Yeah, so it's better to get a couple medium picks than one really good and one really poor.
Exactly, yeah. Nice, more of a balanced approach then, right?
That's cool. Okay, I like that. Do you think it's better to go all in and get sort of the same numbers and get a monopoly on a resource, or do you prefer diversifying?
Oh, you're going to want to get a good distribution of numbers. So get as many different numbers placements as you can. Remembering that, of course, you want the 6s and 8s and 5s and 9s in particular. But you do want to get a balance because this makes sure you stay in the game regardless of dice rolls. Balancing your resources is key. Try to get the same number of pips of wood and brick as well as ore and wheat. That will score you an instant road every time that number is rolled.
Oh, right, because you need the same number of resources to buy that resource.
Correct.
To buy that road. So, okay, that makes sense. Once the game gets going, though, what suggestions do you have as you're trying to expand?
Okay, so the number one that I would consider is that you don't want to block yourself in. Think ahead so that you can build for more resources and even the longest road. You definitely want to focus on wheat and ore. Every game-winning strategy depends on those 2. You got to have them. Wheat is part of 3 different builds, so you can't go wrong with wheat. Ore always needs wheat, so to be played. So you got to remember that too. They go together. Remember that brick and wood are also used together equally. If you get jammed up with too many of one resource, use a port as an outlet to trade. Brick is highly valued in the game too, because there is actually 1 more wood tile than brick. Sheep I find is usually easy to trade for, and ore is really powerful resources and you really need that to win.
Oh, okay. So the port actually goes back to what you said earlier, where you want to be adjacent to 2 land spaces when you're in your sea space.
Exactly.
So that makes sense. What do you suggest? You mentioned road placement there. What are your suggestions for that?
You usually want to have your roads pointing towards the outside of the board. You have to outguess your opponents here, though. Remember that you shouldn't be looking not to improve your chances of getting a good board position, but also trying to inconvenience your opponents. That's pretty key. Ideally, you should aim for 2 open intersections so you can actually fork your road and go for 2 settlements on 2 roads instead of 3.
Right. Okay. So you save yourself a road. So that's actually better to go that way. Okay. So I think we need to talk about probabilities in the game because there are different odds for different rolls. What kind of odds are you looking for here?
Okay. So you have to remember that you're playing with 2 6-sided dice, and you're going to get one of 36 different outcomes. Okay. Since the game uses the sum, there are different probabilities of rolling certain numbers. There's only one way you're ever going to get a 2. Or 11. But there are 5 ways to roll a 6. So you're going to really want to mitigate luck as much as you can by playing the odds. I mentioned a little earlier. And you're going to want to maximize pips by getting a good distribution of those critical numbers. The number most likely, of course, to be rolled is going to be the middle 7. But there are 6 different ways to get that. Next, of course, are going to be 6 and 8, and then the 5 and the 9.
Oh, that's cool. I hadn't really thought about the higher probability there, but that seems rather fundamental to the game. So why don't we move on to development cards? I believe the game has 14 knights, 5 victory points, 2 monopoly cards, 2 road cards, and 2 year of plenty cards. What's the deal on these? Which ones am I hoping for?
So I find that knights are really powerful. They're going to protect your tiles. You actually have a 56% chance of drawing a knight. They also block your opponent's valuable tiles, and they're going to give you a free card. Victory points are always great.
I love victory points. That's my only goal, man.
that's what you're aiming for. So hey, since this game gives players the almost perfect information, one strategy can be effective is to keep track of what cards are in play. So just keep your eyes peeled. Pay attention to dice rolls when you have this card too. Okay, this card is great in the late game because you can wreak havoc on your opponents. Road building can be great burst too, to get 3 roads and a settlement down at the end. That's pretty powerful. And I just find the year of plenty though isn't great because you have to spend 3 cards just to get 2. It's fine in the early game though if there's a hard resource that you're just having trouble getting.
Well, the good thing is most of the time you're my opponent, and so I'm actually planning on wreaking my havoc on you. So thank you, thank you for filling me in on the tips.
I think I'm shooting myself in the foot right now, so this could be really bad.
Finally, I'll get the elusive victory.
Well, let's put that back on the shelf, get some dust on it.
It's a great game, though. So one of my favorite parts of the game is the robber.
Yeah.
How do you? I mean, it's the bugger, your neighbor mechanic. So how do you like to play the robber? When's the best time, and who do you play it on?
Okay, so number 1, if you're looking at the probability and the odds again, you're going to have to assume that the robber on average will come up every 6 rules. All right, so that's kind of critical to you. So you realize how much movement's going to be happening with the robber. You're going to want to use it always against the board leader. All right, because everyone else is thinking the same thing. Okay. But don't forget, though, when you're considering who the board leader is, you want to remember that if someone's holding development cards, you got to count those towards their relative strength as well. A key critical piece is that you don't want to anger too many opponents. You don't want to get them all ticked off at you. But you do want to use the robber to block what they need rather than what their biggest producer is. So who cares if they've got lots of ore going and they're saturated in ore? Let them keep getting ore, right? If it's the other products you don't want. You want to try to create a log jam that holds them back. If everyone is even, then my suggestion is play it to the person to your right, so that if they are going to go for a revenge on you, it's going to take them some time to get to you.
Okay, that sounds really cool. So let's talk about mid-game strategy. What would you say are the overarching approaches that you use throughout the game once you're established on the board?
So there's actually quite a few little pieces of information here you're going to want to bear in mind. 1, you're going to want to track people's cards so you know who has what.
Oh, is this like counting cards?
Counting cards, counting resources, yeah, and being very aware of what everyone else's board is and what their hands are as much as you can. 2, you're going to want to go for like a 3-to-1 port. They should let you build something as long as you have a hand of 8 or more cards. So that'll keep you being productive.
Right. So you're always going to be able to build something if you've got 8 cards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you keep as long as you're on a 3-to-1 port, then you have that flexibility with 8 or more cards. Always. You're going to want to trade before building. So your opponents are often more malleable before you lay a tile on the board. After that, it gets
so
tougher.
propose the trade ahead of time, because once you see what I'm up to, you're less likely to want to actually help me.
Exactly,
meet my goals.
You got it right. And once they are onto you, then they're going to be more hesitant. You don't want to get painted into a corner on a resource, or your opponents will notice and starve you of it. So you've got to try and really stay balanced. And I know from our games you are.
That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're very
Whenever I
astute at
see
that.
you lacking, I make sure the entire board will deprive you of that.
Yeah, and so going along with that though is you want to get self-sufficient. So, but before the end game too, you want to be well sufficient before that's starting to happen, right? You don't want to be dependent on the benevolence of any of your opponents in the trade game.
Fair, because most of them are jerks.
That's right. They will not trade with you, especially when they know. So if you have more than 7 cards in hand, buy something. You don't want to get burned with the robber. That's a big one too. So keep yourself under 7. Be flexible as the game evolves. Adapt to what the other players are doing, and figure out as quickly as you can what their sort of approach and strategy is, so that you can counter it.
Is that fairly important in the game then? Is staying on top of what everyone else is doing?
Oh yeah. You want to make sure that you are like very versed in what your opponents have, where they're going, what they're and just be very critical of what their plays are and what they're trying and what they're trying to do. That's
right. Block them if you can,
yes.
or branch a direction that allows you more expansion.
Right, because
so
then
you can get away.
Yeah. You can employ countermeasures.
Blocking you.
Right? Yes, yeah.
That's right.
And actually, along that vein is when you see what they're going for, then you can go for a strategy that they're not going for. So, creating less competition for you and more availability of the options on your side.
Okay, that actually sounds like an entire other video that we would need to get into, sort of the archetypes or the different major overarching strategies that a player might use in this game. Is that something?
Oh yeah, because there are like some very definitive different personalities that you can sort of take on in this game, and ways of winning. Basically, I'd love to get into that. We should definitely revisit that down the road.
Okay, we'll put a thumbtack in that one.
Exactly.
Anything else?
Yeah, there was one more actually that I did want to mention was avoid getting a target on your back. So what I was mentioning earlier with the robber, you don't want to start ticking off a lot of people on the board, because that's painting the target, or bursting too fast too soon. So for example, you want to pick up the longest road late in the game when your opponents are way less likely to focus on you then.
Right, of course. So maybe hold back a few cards and then lay everything down at once, make the big surge so that not everybody notices you.
Exactly.
That's great. This is really going to help me improve my game a lot. Thanks for all your tips and your strategies, Cax.
Yeah, no problem.
For those of you, it's amazing to talk with you here about this. Appreciate your expertise. And for those of you settling in Catan, if you picked up some useful ideas from this guide, please subscribe to the channel and check out some of our other strategy guides and give us a like. Thanks so much for your time.